You can hear it if you are paying attention, the sound under the surface, the voice behind the curtain, the steady warning from men who have walked the battlefield, who have seen what is coming, and who are now raising the alarm. They are not speaking in riddles, they are being clear, direct, urgent. And yet almost no one is listening. Top generals are stepping forward with one message: prepare for war, not someday, not somewhere far away, but soon, possibly very soon. They see what is coming. They track movements, alliances, weapons, systems. They see the buildup of something that could reshape this entire world, and they are trying to tell us. But what is the nation doing? We are scrolling through dopamine. We are trapped in daily outrage cycles, wrapped in debates over nonsense. We are consumed with triviality and impulse, while men trained to see conflict before it arrives are trying to get us ready for something real, not digital, not emotional real. They cannot scream any louder. They are writing papers, giving interviews, sending out classified briefings. They are speaking directly. They are saying it will not be like last time. It will not be a slow build-up. It will not be easy to contain. They see the collision course between China and the West. They see the instability boiling over in Russia. They see the deep hatred building across Iran and proxy networks. They see how fragile the global balance has become and how quickly it could all break. You do not have to be a genius to connect the dots. One nation is testing missiles, another is invading a neighbor, another is preparing cyber attacks, and still another is watching and waiting for a moment of weakness. And who is ready, who is kneeling, who is watching, who is awake? Not the politicians, not the media, not the culture. Sure and sadly, not most of the people. Our people are not alarmed. They are distracted. They are entertained. They are conditioned to ignore danger until it is too late. We hear warning after warning, and we walk past it like we are immune, like destruction would somehow honor our convenience and wait for a better time. We scroll while the sirens are sounding. We mock the ones who speak plainly. We call them paranoid or old-fashioned or extreme, and we go back to sleep. But war does not wait for you to get ready. War comes when it chooses, not when you choose. And I am not just speaking of physical war. I am talking about the collapse that comes when a nation refuses to take warning seriously. Our borders mean nothing. If our minds are numb, our missiles mean nothing. If our morale is gone, every stronghold we have, every defense we built is rotting. When we no longer believe the cost of alertness is worth paying, you can feel it. When you walk through airports, when you sit in restaurants, when you flip through news channels, the sense of false security, the assumption that we have time, the idea that the world will just keep going, as it always has, no matter what the generals say, when really there is a countdown ticking louder every day. And these voices who are speaking, they do not gain anything by sounding the alarm. Many of them would rather not speak at all, but they still carry inside them an oath, a responsibility, that even if the people are not listening, they have to keep shouting, because the moment they stop, the moment the last watchman goes silent, is the moment the gates are left unguarded. The tragedy is not just that war may come. The greater tragedy is that when it does, many will say no one saw it coming, when in fact many do. We simply refuse to look with them. We cannot afford that blindness any longer. We cannot keep closing our ears, because facing the warning is uncomfortable. We have lived in comfort for too long. We have forgotten what vigilance feels like. We have forgotten what serious times require, and we have forgotten the price of ignoring those who were placed to see further than we can see. These men who sit in rooms marked with silence, analyzing possibilities that would shake our world at the roots. They are trying to help us. They are not gods. They are not prophets, but they are messengers, and the message is clear: get ready, because sleep will not shield you from the shaking that is coming. When a people tune out the watchmen, they awaken only to disaster. There was a time when the nation respected its watchmen, when a military leader stood before the people and spoke with authority, and the country paid attention, not because he demanded it, but because he had earned it, not because of political power, but because of personal sacrifice. When a general spoke about war or crisis or danger, people listened because they knew he had seen the cost of conflict with his own eyes. That time is gone today when generals speak warning about future War's global threats, or the reality of what could soon come, they are often dismissed, ridiculed, or ignored, not because they are wrong, but because our culture no longer knows how to honor discipline. Authority or truth, we have become so addicted to our own opinions that we cannot recognize weight. When it enters the room, we have been trained to trust influencers over institutions, to follow celebrities over veterans, to believe headlines over experience. The men who spent decades studying warfare, leading troops, managing crises, viewing the world through the lens of long-term consequences, have now been shoved into the background in favor of louder, more entertaining voices that have not earned the right to speak on such matters, and yet dominate every screen we do not want to hear. Warnings unless they come wrapped in convenience. We do not want to listen unless the truth makes us feel good. And the moment someone says, prepare, sacrifice, wake up, we reach for the mute button. Because that kind of message requires something we are not used to giving any more responsibility. That is the deeper issue. We no longer want to be responsible for facing hard things. The burden of knowing is heavy, and our culture prefers lightness, empty hope, comfort, without cost. We have idolized ease, and now we cannot carry the weight of warning. We have trained ourselves to reject any voice that calls us to alertness, and to instead follow those who keep us entertained, informed, but numb-fed, but not full. And so, even when generals speak, even when they risk reputation and relationships, stand up and say something is coming, even when they look past politics and speak from a place of deep concern, the people scroll past the statement like it never mattered. The headlines twist it. Talk shows mock it, and society moves on as if the one who sounded the alarm was the problem instead of the threat itself. A nation that mocks its watchmen is not enlightened, it is endangered. A people that laughs when someone calls them to prepare will not be ready when the shaking comes. These are men who understand the horrors of war. They are not eager for it. They are not trying to manipulate fear. They have buried soldiers. They have stood in places most of us would never dare to visit. They do not speak lightly, but there is no weight given to their voice anymore, because the culture now insists that every voice is equal, even when the evidence says otherwise. Equality in dignity does not mean equality in wisdom and experience, and we have confused the two. Where once we had reverence for wisdom, we now have noise. Where once we made room for truth to challenge us, we now run from anything that costs us comfort. We think it is strength to disregard authority, but it is not. It is weakness disguised as independence, rebellion dressed up as courage, and it has poisoned how we engage with the very people sent to protect us. And this is not just a social problem, it is a spiritual one. Any system that silences its watchmen is already preparing for collapse. Any people who roll their eyes at the sound of warning are already walking toward their own destruction. The wall is only as strong as the men who guard it, and if the guards speak and the city does not listen, the wall will fall, and the blame will not be on the messenger, but on those who ignored him. We need to recover what it means to honor again, not blind loyalty, but the kind of respect that recognizes someone has been through the fire, and that fire gave them something worth hearing, something worth considering, something weightier than our own opinions. Because when those men speak, when they issue warnings, they are not playing games. They are trying to give us time, trying to open our eyes, trying to put courage in our hands before we are forced into decisions. We are not ready to make the watchmen, are not the enemy. The silence is not safety. And the truth will not wait until we are comfortable enough to hear it. A nation that refuses to listen will one day be forced to obey something far more brutal than a warning. You can shout warnings as loud as you want, but if the people have no spiritual ears, they will never hear them. That is where we are right now, a nation not just ignoring its generals, but unable to hear the urgency because we have gone numb in the soul. The issue is not just that we are Unaware, the deeper truth is that we no longer know how to be awakened. You can put 1,000 reports on the news showing military build-ups in Asia, missile tests in rogue nations, rising nuclear threats, increase in cyber attack patterns, and most of the country will still not budge, not because the information is not available, but because the heart of the nation is desensitized. It is not about how loud the warnings are anymore. It is about how silent the conscience has become. For years we have been conditioned to exchange discernment for distraction. We are entertained at every hour, filled with noise, images, and narratives that pull our focus from what matters. We have been taught to numb our fears with content, with clicks, with comfort. And in doing so we have lost the inner alert system that once kept us vigilant. A nation without spiritual discernment cannot respond to spiritual warnings, and even more so, it cannot understand the deeper meaning of the shaking that is stirring in world right now. The signs are not just military, they are moral, they are ethical, they are deeply spiritual, and a nation that once knew how to seek the voice of heaven has forgotten what that voice even sounds like. This is not a call to religion, it is a call to reality. A broken spiritual compass produces broken national direction. We have wandered from the fear of God and landed in the fear of everything else. We fear opinions, we fear truth, we fear silence, but we do not fear the judgment of a righteous and holy God who has in times past allowed nations to crumble when they refuse to hear and refuse to repent. We are living in the days where the church often sounds no different from the culture, where the voice of conviction has been replaced by comfort, where worship has turned into performance, and where prophetic urgency has been replaced by diluted positivity and shallow slogans. We do not want to be shaken, and because of that we are not ready for the shaking. That is why these warnings are going unheard. The ears of the nation are tired of truth, and when truth becomes tiring, deception becomes appealing. We do not want to hear that war may come, that hardship may arrive, that sacrifice may be required. We want the soft version of reality. We want the edited version, the version that keeps us feeling safe while we sleep through the sirens. And there was a time when the sound of judgment would reach a nation's heart and bring it to repentance, when tragedy or threat or conflict would cause people to fall on their knees, not just in desperation, but in humility. Now we hear these things and we scroll past them as if they are just more content to consume in the endless feed of forgetfulness. You cannot wake up a generation that has been trained to sleep whenever it feels uncomfortable. You cannot move a people whose emotions sit higher than their convictions. And that is what makes this moment more dangerous than most realize. We are not just facing a possible war in the physical sense, we are facing a war for the nation's soul, and right now the soul is asleep with its eyes open. We need conviction again. We need the kind of holy shaking that brings us back to the cross, that brings us back to reverence, that brings us back to the moments when we as a people would stop everything and return to what is right. But that will not happen as long as we are content with shallow spirituality, and as long as warnings are seen as offensive instead of redemptive. We are not ready for what is coming because we have not asked the deeper question of who we have become. We are trying to answer global threats without first facing internal decay, and no general, no army, no strategy can protect a nation that has lost its spiritual covering. We lost the voice of God, and we started mistaking silence for safety, but silence is never safe when it comes from the absence of conviction. It simply means the protection we once had may no longer be in place. And so we cannot even hear the warnings in the natural because we have rejected all sense of warning in the spirit. And now the sound of judgment does not stir us because the sound of repentance no longer moves us. Every collapsing nation in history lost its ability to hear before it lost its ability to stand. We used to know what kept us standing. We used to understand the foundation beneath all our strength and success, but somewhere along the way we forgot. We assumed our status was permanent, our dominance guaranteed, our blessing automatic. But blessing is never automatic. It is always tied to obedience, humility to truth and to God. The rise of America was not an accident. It was not simply the result of economics or geography or political structure. It was born in dependence on something higher than ourselves. It was forged in the fire of conviction, in the courage of men and women who knew that freedom meant nothing without a moral compass, who knew that justice without righteousness would collapse under its own weight, who knew that power without character would rot a nation from within. That was our foundation. And when we honored it, we thrived. When we feared God, we walked in strength. When we prayed, we found peace. When we were not ashamed to say that this land needed divine direction, we had clarity, we had unity, we had a sense of purpose that called us beyond our personal agendas. But now we stand in a moment where those ancient foundations are cracked, not because of time, but because of choices. We started believing we could stand without the hand of God, that we could build a future without eternal principles, that we could write laws without higher law. And the result has been nothing short of tragic. We did not just lose influence around the world, we lost our identity at home. We are not the same people we once were, not because the threats outside changed, but because the strength inside faded. We are not hated only by our enemies, we are being questioned by our friends, because we no longer know who we are or where we are going. The truth is, we cannot maintain global leadership if we continue to reject the moral and spiritual fabric that held us together. No amount of defense spending or technology or innovation can replace a soul that is anchored in righteousness. And we are proving that with every crisis, with every scandal, with every moment of confusion that hits our nation like a wave and finds us unprepared to stand against it. The generals can warn, the leaders can debate, the experts can strategize, but if the people do not return to what made us strong, it will all be in vain, because there is no leadership without lordship. There is no discipline without truth. There is no endurance without conviction. We keep asking why the country feels like it is falling apart, why the world no longer looks to us with respect and trust. But the answer is simple. We tried to keep the fruit while cutting down the tree. We wanted the blessing without the burden of responsibility and reverence. We wanted influence with no sacrifice. But there is no such thing. The roots of this country were deep in reverence. They were deep in moral clarity, in the belief that right and wrong were not opinions but divine standards, that the strength of a nation was not just in its military, but in its morality, not just in its economy, but in its ethics, not just in its vote, but in its virtue. That is what made us great and losing. That is what set us on this slow but deadly decline. If we want to regain our place, if we want to lead again with authority, influence, and trust in strength, we must first return to the fear of God, not a fear that paralyzes, but a fear that humbles, a fear that makes us wise, a fear that reminds us we are not self-made, and that justice without God is simply power dressed in pride. We do not talk like this in the public square anymore, because we think we are too advanced for faith, too educated for reverence, too liberated for obedience. But that is the exact deception that ruins empires, thinking they can sustain greatness without honoring the one who gave it. This is not about blending politics and religion. This is about spiritual survival, about knowing that what kept us standing this long was not our ability to outsmart the world, but our willingness to bow before the one who made it. We are not too far gone, but we are far off course. And if we want to hear the warnings, if we want to respond with strength and wisdom and clarity, we need more than military strategy. We need a national return to God. because the truth is simple losing. Sight of him is what made us blind to everything else. If we forget what kept us standing, we will never be ready for what is coming next.